Hey everybody, lecture 4 on the tabular environment, which is for building tables. We're going to build on what we've done so far. I'm going to show you the hard way to do this first, and then maybe a little easier way to do these tables in a few minutes. So let's go over the preamble real quick. Of course, the first thing we have, the batch of things we have in the preamble are things we've seen before. I've added one new thing, something called multi-row. We won't pay attention to that until we start to fool around with the tables a little bit later. And the multi-col is different from multi-column, which allows for multiple columns to be merged in a table. Multi-row allows for multiple rows to be merged in a table. The second set of things here are mostly table driven as well. You've got make cell, which allows us to use these new commands to change the thickness of our lines, our vertical and horizontal lines in the table. So our borders basically, and they're called XH line and XC line. XH line will take and draw a line across the entire table from across all columns, and XC line will do it over wherever we tell it to. All right, so it's a little bit different. The use package array here, the second package we've got in the second tier, allows us to make our vertical lines thicker. So both of these make cell and array are used to make thicker border lines. The HH line command is another way to do a horizontal line, but you can define it in different ways. The table XC color allows us to set different colors in cells and across rows and columns. And these next two things down have nothing to do with the table, but we'll talk about the show frame package and the geometry package. Just note the geometry package is a way to set up your margins on the page, left, right, top, and bottom, and you can define how wide you want your margins to be in any case, but we'll experiment with that a little bit too. You're not going to be really tested on that. We just want you to know it's something you can do. All right. The next series of things are things we've seen before, with the exception of this new command called \define color, where we can define specific colors either in HTML. Notice that here I give the second argument in this command is for the color name. There is already a gray color in, but it's sometimes too dark, and so you can pick a lighter colored gray and get its HTML code from an HTML code picker online somewhere and put that code in here. Or if you have an RGB one, there's a way to put an RGB code in here as well. But you can define the colors that you want ahead of time in the preamble. You can also define these within the table themselves, but sometimes it's nice just to know you can define the color ahead of time. Plus, you can use these colors in text and in other places too, as you're doing different things in your document. We don't really need this fourth tier of things in the preamble, the theorem style stuff for this particular assignment, but it doesn't hurt for them to be there. We're just building on what we've had in the past. Plus or minus a few things. You can technically take everything we've done so far and put it all in the preamble. Just make sure you don't have any repeats, and that could be your working preamble. Because we definitely have more new commands in the previous lectures. So let's get into the document. And let's get into this first table up here that starts with x squared in the top left corner. So one thing to notice here, this goes with the geometry package, which we'll talk more about here shortly. But the page numbering on this page is set to Roman, so it will give like a little lowercase I, two I's, so the lowercase Roman numerals. And we also have this page style empty, which means there will be no page number on this first page. And so you can define a lot of things with what they call this page style to have your page be set up a certain way on different pages. So you can have different page styles from page to page. Not really necessary in what we're doing today, but it's nonetheless something that's good to know about, as it does come in handy. All right, so let's look at this first table. And we've centered this table by beginning a center and ending a center around the table over here in our LaTeX code. And every table or tabular environment does a begin tabular, end tabular. And right after the begin tabular, you define how many columns you want and how you want the alignment in each column to go. So for example, the first column is centered where the x squared is at over here. All right. And then the next, and there's a vertical line. Each one of these vertical lines represents where we're going to have a vertical line from top to bottom in our table. So you can have it centered for the first column. The next two columns are centered, but there's no line between them. So that's why the tabular has no line between it, but they're both centered in their respective columns. And then we have a right column justified, and on either side of it we have a bar. That's where this empty spot is, where the colon is, semicolon. And then we have the not in the in, also right justified. Vertical line, left justified for math. Vertical line, left justified for mode. Vertical line, left justified for... Now, you probably don't want a table looking like this one does, but this is just showcasing you what you can do. If I wanted a vertical line after that L, I just simply, where the backslash key is, I hold down Shift and hit that, and it'll put the vertical line in there. If I recompile it, it'll put a vertical line there for me. And I can really build the table to look any way I want it to look. So we're going to leave it alone, have it looking ugly. And you'll notice the next command below that, your column definitions, is hline. And it draws that complete horizontal line across the entire top of the graph. I mean of the table. And then we start entering in our items that go in the individual columns in the next, for the first row. And so x squared tabular is colon not in math mode. It's not in math mode, so anything you put in math inside of it still has to be like the x squared in between money symbols. But these ands, just like back in the math environment with the matrix and the array environment, or the aligned equations, you put an and to separate until it goes to the next column. And so if you, up here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like 9 columns total. We have a C, 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 R, 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 L, L, L. So there should be 8 ands in each row to kind of separate those things out. So if you want to have exactly 9, then the first thing goes in front of the first and, then you got an and, then tabular, and, is, and, colon, and, not, and, mathy in, and, math, the and symbol again, or the ampersand, mode, and then the last, the sum of I to n of 2i cubed. Now at the end of each row, you just signify the end of the row by putting a double backslash, and then if you want a hline to cover the entire thing, you put the command \hline, and that'll draw the line underneath that first row. And then you move on to the second row, and you enter in the things you want there. Notice you do not have to put anything in between two ands if you want it to be blank. But you do have to have those ands there to signify if you want your table to look a specific way. You may not want them there all the time, and you can fix those things accordingly. And then you have an H line at the end of that to show the line underneath that. Then I have an and symbol, another ampersand symbol there, showcasing that's not the and that separates, that's the and, the text and. Ands must be used to create the table entries, and that's just going through what I just said. So the ands are all there. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. So you'll always have one less and than you have columns if you're building a nice, structured table. Of course, you can experiment with this any way you want. So let's move to the next one. This is a simple little table. Everything's been has borders around it. Everything in this table here is in between begin and end. We defined our columns as all left justified, LLL, and we put a vertical line in between around each one to close all. It gives us all four of those vertical lines we see. All right. Then we got H line defining the top line, and then we have the and default and is a. \\H line gives us our first row. Notice I have only 2 ands because I have 3 columns. and then fully and justified and table to give me to fill those three columns in row 2 with those words, and then an H line at the end to close off the bottom. This is probably more likely what you want a table to look like in the finished product, although this is a silly table. Another way to do the tables is in the way that the sheet that I'll show you later does this, is these what they call begin and end table. So I'm going to hit Command on my Mac, but if you have a PC, you can do Control and then the question mark key to uncomment something, because I had commented this out. This is exactly the same table as the one we just looked at that says the default is a fully justified table. I put it in between the table environment because the table environment is what they call a floating environment. And what a floating environment does is that it can make your table kind of float in different weird places, and you can have a lot of control over that. So if your table's wanting to like move to the next page, if you put in the square brackets here after the begin table, if you put an H exclamation mark, it will put it right where you want it. If you'd rather prefer it to be at the top and you put a T there instead and scroll the top, it put it at the top. And I bet you can guess if I put a B there for bottom and recompile it, what it's going to do is shove it at the bottom of the page. And so that's not always necessary. You're usually okay with the tabular environment, but also the table environment, because it's a floating environment, allows you to use commands such as \centering to center the table in the middle of the page rather than have to have a beginning and end centering. So it's really, up to you what you want to do. It's not necessary to have a begin-end table. As a matter of fact, I'm going to comment this back out by hitting Command and the question mark key, or for you PC people, Control and the question key. Recompile that to get that out of the way. Alright, so now we've got this third table down, which is not a big deal. The only difference is that we threw a no indent in front of above it. So notice it is not indented, it's fully justified left, whereas this says it's fully justified, but it indented it like a paragraph. So if you don't want it to indent and you want your table to start at the very far left-hand margin, then no indent will do that. All right. Other than that, this is not very different. I centered all my columns CCC and put vertical bars across them. Again, have 2 ands because I have 3 columns to give my separators for my columns where I put my entries, and have H lines at the top between the first and second row, and at the bottom. Okay, and use double backslashes to go to the next row. Okay, so the third one down is showing you the use of what we call multi-column. Now in the preamble we had use package multi-call. This is part of the multi-call package. It allows you to merge several cells together, or several columns together. And in this one, I just have everything center lined, and then we didn't really do much with the top, but we have a vertical line between the first and second and third columns. And so we just put A, B, C in there, and we notice we have 2 ands in there, so we have those 3 columns, an H line. And then for this last second row, we did a multi-column across the row. We said we wanted to span all 3 columns. We want it to be right justified, and the bars at the end do the same thing as the bars up in the original column definitions are. It says put a bar at the ends. Okay, if you take those out, it won't put the vertical bars at the ends of the cell. And then in the third argument for multi-column, you have to put in squiggly brackets anything you want text-wise to go in there. And then a \/ H line will end it up and draw the line at the bottom. So the multi-column argument, once again, the first argument is the number of columns you want it to go over. Notice I have no ands on this column. It's because I merged all 3 columns together. I don't need those ands. So when you use multi-column, if you don't go over the entire row, you have to think about, okay, well, I still need an and in here somewhere, and we'll see that here in the next table example. So in this second to last table example where I have last name, first name, date, score, and I have some names of folks and dates and scores. I'm using this to showcase a few of the other little things we had in the preamble. The HH line was one of those things. The HH line is an alternative way to define how far you want your horizontal lines to go across the table. And so on this first row here, it says it starts with last name, first name, date. I wanted the H line to go across the entire thing, so I could have just used H line here, but I wanted to show you an alternative. HH line inside squiggly brackets after, or curly braces after that. You put it in between two vertical lines, how many dashes, basically the minus key on your keyboard. I put 4 there so it goes across all 4 columns. On the second row down, where I have Aiken, Jeremy 125, notice the line only goes under the second column, third, and fourth columns. Well, in H line, the HH line command, I can use the tilde symbol to define that I don't want it to go underneath the first, and then put a vertical bar, and then put how many lines I want it to go under. So I want the 3 dashes that come after that line, say I want the line to only go under the second, third, and fourth columns, but I don't want it to go there. So if I wanted one just to go over the second and third column, or third and fourth column, excuse me, I could take that out, put a little squiggly sign in there, and take this one out and put a vertical bar there. And if I recompile that, it'll only put it underneath the third and fourth column. It's just something you can know that is possible for you to do. You don't have to do it this way, because you could do it the way I do it next. So for example, where I've got my name, Dr. Monk's name, and then Steph Curry's name, notice that the horizontal lines under my name go between columns 3 and 4. Underneath Dr. Monk's, it goes between 1 to 3, and Steph Curry's, it goes from 3 to 4, the horizontal line. And so the way I did that was a command called \cline, which is called center line. And then you can say I want it to go from 3-4, 1-3, 3-4. I could have had it just gone between 1-2 for Dr. Monk's if I wanted to. And we'll do that. So C-line comes in handy in that sense as well. All right, and maybe a little easier to deal with. The last row I have here, where it says conclusion, Aiken wins, I used a multi-column. Notice this had 4 columns in it total, and my multi-column's going over 2, the middle 2, specifically columns 2 and 3. I right justified it, and I wrote the term conclusion in there, and that wrote conclusion in my table. Since that covered 2 and 3, I still have to have an empty space for column 1 and an and to signify that, and an and then the Aiken wins term right here. All right. And so the text it probably isn't that necessary here. It's just something we did to be playful, but that's another command that texts it, and it looked like it just emphasized it, if nothing else, made it italic. So nothing big there, but keep track that however many columns you have your multi-column go over, you still need the ands to finish out the rest of the table. All right. The only other thing we did in this particular one is we did a cell color on the score for Dr. Aiken's. You probably none of you would know who Dr. Aiken is. Maybe Lauren might. I don't know. But he was here for a few years. He was a very good professor of ours. Anyway, we defined an HTML code and gave it that kind of aqua blue or like baby blue or whatever you want to call that color. It's kind of a neon, I guess, blue. And then put the number 99 after it to fill in that 99 that's in there. But cell color, HTML in square brackets, the color code in that and that. If we had defined this in the earlier, we could have defined it as our blue or our neon blue or whatever. And and done that. So that's that table. The last table is showcases how we can make our borders thicker. So I have begin tabular and end tabular like we've seen, except for I'm using a few different rules in here, or a few different settings. So some of the things in the preamble allow us to do this. Specifically, the array one allows us to make our vertical lines thicker. And so what I did, instead of having just a regular vertical line like we've been defining our column separators in previous tables here, I've done an exclamation mark, and right after it in parentheses, squiggly brackets, put a V rule width 1 point. So that made my vertical lines at the ends and in between all thicker. They definitely look thicker than the ones we had in the previous table. And then right after each one of those, I put a center C, just like we did previously. So basically, it's just a longer-winded version of what we've already done, just to make the width thicker. All right, you can also make the horizontal lines thicker with another thing we put in the preamble, where we'd use XH line. And we can define how thick we want that to be. So this makes our horizontal line across the top 1 point. And then I used a new command called row color gray, the gray we defined in the preamble. And it colors that entire row that we're about to put information in gray. And so notice I have 3 columns. So I need 2 ands. And I left the first one blank. So before the first and, I left it blank. So that left this first row, first column cell blank. And then attempted homework, not attempted homework, // H line 1 point. I probably could have put that on the same line like we've done other H lines, and it wouldn't make a difference. And it doesn't. Then on the second row down, I have cell color gray, and put the word female in there, and cell color, and I defined the purple in the first couple instances as an HTML code. So HTML put its code in and put the number in that I wanted to go in that cell. Notice this number is not in squiggly brackets like with the multi-column command. Then an and, another cell color, HTML, purple color code, and the 6. // and I did another H line 1 point to kind of stay consistent. And then I did cell color gray male, cell color HTML CC8 did 5. And then for the 3 one, I'm showing you the alternative way. You could have just said cell color purple if you defined it in your preamble like we did. And I did that right before this because they were all done like the CC8 bed beforehand, but then to get my bottom line, I did XH line 1 point. All right, I'll show you a quicker way or another way to do these tables here in just a moment. Okay. Let's talk about the geometry package and what it does and how you can utilize it. You're not going to have to utilize it much, but occasionally it comes in handy. So this last paragraph on here says, notice the margins on this page and that there is no page number. This is because we use the use package options geometry, options meaning we put in the left, right, top, bottom margins command in the preamble. And we use the this page style empty command on this page. So when we use the this page style empty, it did not put a numbering down here, even though we had it set up to do Roman numerals. So on this second page down, what we've done is we've changed the geometry. We used a command called new geometry, and we defined a new margin and a bottom margin. And we did this add to ship out star show picture frame. This shows the margins for this page only. So notice the margins on this page are lots narrower. And the page number will actually show on here because we did not use the this page style empty command, and it shows a Roman numeral 2 down bottom. That's really all it does. All right. And notice it says this page will have a page number 2. You can use the command the page, and it will automatically put whatever page number you're on that page. I don't think that's very necessary in most instances, but it does come up. It may come in handy once in a blue moon. All right, for the next page down, we've changed the geometry back to the original one that we defined in the preamble with the same margin of error, same margins settings that we put in there. But we've changed the page numbering to Arabic, which means now we're going to have regular good old numbers 1, 2, and 3 that we're used to seeing. Restored geometry to the original. As I said, that command restores it to the original that was in the preamble. And then we add ship out to show these. What this does is shows these boxes here on the page, so you can see what your page margins look like. If you don't want that to be there, you just can comment it out and it will take those away. Alright, but it's kind of nice sometimes if you want to see where your margins are at and how they're set up, to know that you can do that. And so at the bottom of this page it did number at 1, and then we went to another new page and it numbered at 2, and when it kept the same geometry that's on the previous page, we just didn't ask it to show us the rectangular boxes there. Again, this is not something I'm going to have you do in an assignment, but it's nonetheless good to know you can do it. Alright, so that being said, let's go back to tables for a moment. Let me show you a little bit of a sort of a cheat here. Okay? Because the one function I didn't show you was how to do a multi-row. And you need the multi-row package in the preamble to be able to use multi-row anyway. So we're going to build a table with multi-rows. We're going to place it in here and see what it looks like. So the way you can do this without having to type all this stuff out in here is you can Google a LaTeX table generator. And the first thing you're going to come up to is this particular website called tablesgenerator.com. Matter of fact, let's see if I can get it to go backwards for me or not. Yeah, create LaTeX. Tables, www.tablesgenerator.com. If we go in here, I can go and create a new table. And we'll just do a 3x3 and say create. And then I can do things like this. I can highlight these 3 columns here and say, hey, this is my, come on, man. I need to merge them first. So I need to merge the selected cells, and then in that cell I can say this is my merged table, or whatever you want to put in there. And then I can have that boxed in by clicking on the add borders to the cells there. I can take these 2 here and I can merge those, such as this. And I can take these 4 here, and let's say we wanted to merge those rows and the columns, so we can do this. So notice it got rid of the thing, and I can go ahead and put borders here, borders here. You can be very selective about where your borders go by choosing this option here. This is activate, deactivate, and it will blow it out like this, and you can go in here and actually pull, click on the edges where you don't want borders to go. So if you wanted to have this one gone, you can click on it, turn it off. We're going to leave it on for now. Turn that back off and it turns into that. So here we can just put in somewhere, here we go, and over here we can do something like, I have only begun the multi-column, enter. Now here is a multi-row, period, and I can do here we go, let's put the word again here. Say I want this particular, the top to be centered, I can come up here and center it. Here I want it to be left justified. Let's say I wanted this one to be right justified for whatever weird reason I might have. And I can come down here to generate, and it will generate the code for me. And it says, please, if you need a specific package in your preamble, it will tell you that here. You don't need to copy the whole thing here, because remember, we only need this begin and end table in special circumstances, and most often you just want what's between the tabulars. So I'm going to just grab the begin tabular, end tabular, and copy it, and then come back into our online here and then paste it here. And let's see if that didn't look like we want it to look. And it does. You can also do things in there like change the cell colors and whatnot. So let's just say, for example, I wanted this cell up here to be a specific color. I can pick a color, like let's say we want it to be orange. This one we wanted it to be, I don't know, let's say green. And this one here, I wanted it to be purpley. Or that's what almost looks gray, doesn't it? Let's make it a blue color. And then regenerate that. It will also put in the colors that I need, so I can grab the end tabular to begin tabular again, Command C, come over here, place it in there, grab that whole thing out of there that I put in, paste it in. Let's see if it looks the way we want it to look. There you go. So you have some options there. Just remember that it will give you some weirdness to it if you don't have the multi-row package defined in the preamble. The only other thing I can tell you about tables that you got to be careful about is when you're creating them. More often than not, you can get. Matter of fact, let's just do this. Let's say we had the following real quick. Let's say we just had a centered table, and then we had like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 put in there. Boom boom / H line. Let's put an H line before it too. All right, it should theoretically not work for me, at least the way it's supposed to. Notice it put the 4 on the next line down because I marked the number of columns I want as 3 up here in the right after the words begin tabular. This compiler is way friendlier than some other compilers. Other compilers will just give you an error and not print the table. Also, this one won't do it, but sometimes when you leave out you only have the 1 and, in some compilers it will also give you an error. But this one's kind of friendly and it gives you the table as is and lets you build from that. So apparently they fixed some of the glitches of the not compiling this that used to be the case, so you guys don't have to worry about that as much, but just be wary when you're making the table and go over them with a fine-tooth comb. It never hurts. We only have one more legitimate lecture that you have an assignment for after this, for lecture 5, which is drawing in LaTeX. It's a little bit more detailed, but we'll be back to that soon. So everybody have a good one. We'll talk to you later.